there is an epidemic of fake disabilities or outrageous disabilities that are not really disabilities, and people claiming accommodations like extra time, like all sorts of additional resources and aids on exams, everything from the LSAT to undergraduate courses to even law school tests and these kinds of things. It's out of control, and people are discussing it after a big article in The Atlantic was just released documenting some of this. So I'm going to read you some jaw-dropping statistics here. The increase in disabilities is driven by more young people getting diagnosed with conditions such as ADHD, anxiety, and depression, and by universities making the process of getting accommodations easier. The change has occurred disproportionately at the most prestigious and expensive institutions. At Brown and Harvard, more than 20% of undergraduates are registered as disabled. At Amherst, that figure is 34%. Not all of those students receive accommodations, but researchers told me that most do. The schools that enroll the most academically successful students, in other words, also have the largest share of students with a disability that could prevent them from succeeding academically. Folks, the math is not mathing here. It should not be the case that at these elite universities, where you have to be able to perform very highly and excel on standardized testing and get good grades in high school and all of that, you have this explosion in students claiming disabilities. And of course, things like depression and anxiety are now counting as disabilities. Those are not disabilities, at least not in most cases. They do not. What do you need? A ramp? Like, this is not a wheelchair. This is not an actual disability that would meaningfully stop your ability to take a test or make it different. I mean, I have been diagnosed with and treated for anxiety disorders. Never once would I have considered myself disabled, or was I unable to take tests and achieve academically. And maybe there are some cases, I'll leave space for that, where it truly would, but I think most of this is probably bullshit. And that is very much suggested by the fact that it's overwhelmingly happening at the elite schools. If there was actually some organic rise in disabilities, if we had missed some mass disabling event among Gen Z, you would expect to see that among struggling students at community colleges. But as this Atlantic article pointed out, the rate of disability claims at two-year colleges is pretty much flat. It's pretty consistent. It's these elite universities where people have to be high functioning already to get in and to have gotten there, where suddenly everyone's disabled now. It's obviously fake. It's obviously a scam, at least a lot of it. And even the people on the ground who are left-wing almost certainly know that. Here's another quote from the Atlantic article. "You hear students with disabilities, and it's not kids in wheelchairs," one professor at a selective university who requested anonymity because he doesn't have tenure told me. "It's just not. It's rich kids getting extra time on tests." And I have a real problem with this for a couple reasons. One is that I find it insulting and making a mockery of the people with actual disabilities who do deserve accommodation and respect and dignity, and having people cosplaying as disabled to get ahead, or even convincing themselves, because I think a lot of it probably comes back to victim mentality, convincing themselves that they really are victims. Yeah, I have a real problem with that. I think it's really messed up. But the second problem with it is also that maybe there are some cases where accommodations are appropriate, but I come back to this thought. If the goal of something like the LSAT, the standardized test you take to go to law school, is to measure success in law school. And in law school, right, exams being timed, presumably the idea is that they are partially testing you on how you can perform if you complete tasks in a certain amount of time. That is relevant to the test, and the tests are supposed to predict whether you're able to do the job out in the real world. So if it is a core part of the test to be able to do it in a certain amount of time, and you're not going to get extra time at big law in your corporate job because you feel anxious sometimes, then if you give people exemptions, especially willy-nilly, but really at all, or you give them extra time rather, then you are no longer measuring something important that really, whether they have the disability or not, they need to be able to do if they're going to succeed. So you're weakening the ability of this tool to actually serve as a predictor of future success. And on the other hand, if the time limits are just kind of arbitrary and don't really matter for future success, then everybody should get extra time. No? Like, get rid of them. Just give people an amount of time where no one will really need more. Give everyone 4 hours for the test that's currently 2 hours, and they can leave when they're done, right? Like, this system itself of extra time really makes no sense at a fundamental level. You're either measuring something important with the time constraints that will be mapped onto in the real world, or you are not. But now, of course, it's become this unfair system where it's like keeping up with the Joneses. Well, everyone gets extra time, so if I don't get extra time, I'll be at a disadvantage. And this is shown, the article talks about this, how students who get extra time do outperform other students. So then, of course, I mean, you're going to want to get your fake disability diagnosis to keep up with the Joneses. And more from The Atlantic here, the surge itself is undeniable. Soon, some schools may have more students receiving accommodations than not, a scenario that would have seemed absurd just a decade ago. Think about that for a second. Some schools may soon have more students registered as disabled than not. We've lost the plot, folks. Like, this is beyond parody. More from The Atlantic here. Already at one law school, 45% of students receive academic accommodations. If 45% of people are disabled, then that is a definition of disability that doesn't refer to any sort of disability. That, like, what? Because then that's just typical abilities. If half the population is like that, like, what are we doing here? More from The Atlantic. Paul Graham Fisher, a Stanford professor who served as co-chair of the university's disability task force, told me, I have had conversations with people in the Stanford administration. They've talked about, at what point can we say no? What if it hits 50% or 60%? At what point do you just say, we can't do this? This year, 38% of Stanford undergraduates are registered as having a disability. In the fall quarter, 24% of undergraduates were receiving academic or housing accommodations. Clearly, something here is gone wrong and is not serious or real. If you have, what was that number? 38%, so almost 4 out of 10 Stanford students are disabled. Is the disability in the room with us, or are y'all faking new victim identities and dubious diagnoses so you can get ahead? Because that is what's happening, at least for a lot of these cases. Of course, there's people that are truly disabled. Of course, they should receive reasonable accommodations. But this is turning into a joke, and it is turning American higher education into a laughingstock at this point. Our elite universities have long been like pinnacles of world higher education that people want to come from all across the globe to come to. When it turns into like a TikTok community based on how many fake identities and fake disabilities it's seeing, it's going to become a laughingstock at some point. And that is not just bad for America. That's bad for students. And all of this teaches such a victim mindset and encourages people to constantly think of themselves in terms of what they can't do rather than what they can do. And again, it all makes a mockery of people who genuinely have disabilities and need accommodations. But other than that, we're doing amazing, I guess. I don't know, y'all. Let me know what you think in the comments below, especially if you're one of these people that's totally super duper, really disabled and not at all milking it for advantages or special privileges. I want to hear from you. Let me know in the comments for sure. Make sure to subscribe, hit the like button and all of that. And that'll be it for this episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to rate or review the podcast on Apple, iHeart, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'll be back with more real soon.